Hello everybody and welcome to Attaché, the show that gets you in, out, and around some of the world's greatest cities. My name is Alex Hunter and I'll be your Sherpa on this international adventure. And we start season 2 on Britain's seaside jewel, Blackpool.
Paris.
Paris? That girlfriend you never should have had, that mind-altering meal you really couldn't afford, that after party you had no business attending, that, my friends, is Paris. Paris has two major airports, Orly, primarily but not exclusively for European traffic, and Charles de Gaulle, the big dog, and one of the most loathed airports in Europe. Why? It's big, cumbersome, badly laid out, lacks facilities and amenities, and those which it does have are extremely expensive. Definitely not one of my favorite airports. But since you could be coming into either of those airports, we're going to eschew our beloved cheapest, fastest, best segment and just tell you the best way to get into central Paris from each of those airports.
Orly. There is an RER train service for Orly, but it's a pain, with changes, shuttle buses, and inconvenient stations in Paris. The best option is the ORLYBus, which takes you to central Paris in just 30 minutes and costs €7.50. Charles de Gaulle, the RER train, 35 minutes from the airport to Gare du Nord and just €10. The trains leave from Terminal 3 and the ticket machine accepts notes, coins, and credit cards. Pro tip, pick the RER B express service for a faster ride.
Alternatively, you can take the RoissyBus, just €10 to the center of Paris, but it can take 60 to 90 minutes, even on a good day. And that's all good for my airborne friends, but some of you may arrive in Paris by an altogether different method, like we did.
Jetpacks.
No, not jetpacks, Greg. Although that is a really good idea. The Eurostar. If you're in London, Lille, Brussels, or a host of other European cities, you can jump on the Eurostar and be in Paris in no time. I've been on the Eurostar dozens of times, and I still giggle like an anime cosplayer when I realize I'm on a train from London to Paris, doing 180 miles an hour under the flipping ocean. Science! And once you've recovered from your nerdgasm, the Eurostar will deposit you gracefully at Gare du Nord, eliminating any and all airport faffery. Before we immerse ourselves in the Paris experience, I want to clear something up. Some people say that Parisians can be curt, maybe even a little rude. You know who says that? People who have never been here. Seriously, that stereotype pisses me off because, quite frankly, it's inaccurate. Like any other cosmopolitan city like London or New York, Parisians are generally very busy people. And again, like their counterparts in New York and London, probably don't have time for your touristy shenanigans. Like you and me, all they want is a little common courtesy. And a great way to avoid turning a sandwich order into a diplomatic incident is to at least start the conversation in French. It's amazing how far a bonjour madame or a merci beaucoup will go in this city. And if you want to arrive in Paris ready to talk, then check out our friends over at italki, an online language learning service that connects you with the best language teachers in the world for one-on-one language lessons. Once you have finally shrugged off the collective musk of 320 of your fellow passengers and are finally in the sweet, sweet embrace of Mistress Paris, you need to get around. And I have good news. This is a very easy city to navigate. Arrondissements are named after their number, and this is important because you might hear a hotel or landmark as being in the 5th or 11th, for example, and this can give you a pretty good idea of where it is in relation to the rest of the city. The subway system, known here as the metro, spiderwebs the entire city. It's clean, safe, efficient, and cheap. Everything a metropolitan transit system should be. You can find the metro by looking for this sign. And speaking of which, Paris, being the fashion-conscious capital city that it is, has easily the best-looking station entrances I've ever seen. There are 16 metro lines, but the Paris Metro map is a work of art that makes navigating it a breeze. Google Maps and City Mapper both do metro directions as well. As with any transit system, the metro is a feeding ground for pickpockets, especially on the tourist-heavy lines. But if you take the same precautions you would in any other major city, you won't run into any problems. The metro is great, but it does have one anachronism that bothers me. These paper tickets. Unlike San Francisco, Singapore, London, Hong Kong, or any of its other peer cities, Paris does not have a cohesive tap-in, tap-out system, but they're getting there. The Navigo system can get you a day, week, or month pass, but it can't be topped up, so for fleeting visits, it's really not worth getting one. You and I are stuck with two options. Paper tickets, either a single or a discounted pack or cara of 10, or the Paris Visite, which is a discounted pass for unlimited travel on 1, 2, 3, or 5 consecutive days. Frankly, I'd stick with the paper tickets. They give you unlimited transfers on the Metro and RER for up to 2 hours. A pack of 10 will cost you €14.80, and you can pick one up from a ticket booth or any of the ticket machines. Announcements on the Metro mainly consist of language-agnostic destination announcements. On the more tourist-heavy lines, safety and security announcements are made in English, French, Japanese, German, and Klingon, but for the most part, all you really need to know is where you are and where you're going. One final tip about the Metro, and I've learned this the hard way on a few occasions. On most of the lines, the doors do not open automatically. You either have to press a button, or on some of the older trains, actually unlatch a latch to free yourself. Despite the occasional car being set on fire, Uber is still operating in Paris. There are plenty of cars out there, and rides seem to almost always be cheaper than a taxi. Alternatively, you can use local taxi app Le Cab to hail a normal, more protesty taxi. But you want to know my preferred method of getting around Paris? Walking. This is one of the most beautiful cities in the world, so just give yourself a little bit of extra time to get where you're going and walk. But when I'm in Paris, I like to get around in style, so my preferred method of transport is my chrome Lamborghini. If you haven't already booked your flights, my weapon of choice is Hipmunk, the fastest and easiest way to plan your travel. Check out our show notes below for a link to find and book flights to Paris. Entire books have been written about Paris food culture. Long, pithy tomes that celebrate the gastronomic glory of this city. So it would be impossible, almost insulting, for us to even attempt to distill the essence of Parisian dining into the paltry 5 or 7 minutes we have for food in each of the shows. But what I think I can do is give you a few tips and tricks and things to remember for when you're on the hunt for your next meal in Paris. French bread, French baking in general, is transcendent. It's not just a dietary staple here, it's religion. Bread is so part of their culture, so part of their identity, that it is impossible to conceive of the French, well, without it. They are the masters of it. It's not even a contest. But there is a contest every year to find the best baguette in Paris. And for a nation of people who are totally okay with walking miles for a particular boulangerie's baguette, this is a coveted crown. This year's winner is La Grenière à Pain here in Montmartre. If you're after something a little sweeter for breakfast, you cannot go wrong with a croissant, either by itself or with some confiture, that's jam to you and me, or pain au chocolat, which is a croissant stuffed with melted chocolate. I'm sure you've had one before, but we're at Eric Kaiser near Place Vendôme, and they have one of the best pain au chocolat in Paris. So when you were in that boulangerie or pâtisserie getting your breakfast, you probably stared for an awkward, almost creepy amount of time at the display of cakes and eclairs and macarons and tarts, and thought, actually no, I really shouldn't. I'm watching my figure this month, or I'm not having gluten. Stop with that. Jettison the diet. You're in Paris, for God's sakes. Just take a moment to indulge, and I promise you won't regret it. Lunch is a great opportunity to experience Parisian dining without the dinner price hike and crowds. Most bistros and brasseries will offer a prix-fixe menu which will get you at least a couple of courses and maybe even a glass of wine or some chocolate mousse if you've been a good boy. Intimidated by an unfamiliar language or the hustle and bustle of a cosmopolitan city, it's easy to gravitate towards the tourist traps, the chain diners, or your hotel restaurant. But don't. You'll be disappointed. And frankly, you'll be doing this great city a disservice by not throwing yourself into its fantastic food culture. If you want to find a great place to eat in Paris, especially dinner, my advice, wander. When you leave your hotel, walk towards the residential areas, not away from them. Take some time to explore the back streets, alleyways, and courtyards that make Paris what it is, and I promise you that you'll find a bistro or brasserie that will change the way you look at food forever. For some on-the-ground knowledge, we asked our friends over on the Paris subreddit of reddit.com for that one food item that we should try while we're here. And the #1 item, given with typical Parisian inflection, was Bertillon ice cream, of course. On the Ile Saint-Louis in the middle of the Seine, you'll find this diminutive Parisian institution that's been serving ice cream. What? Oh, for God's sakes. On Ile Saint-Louis in the middle of the Seine, you'll find this diminutive Paris institution that's been serving ice cream flavored with natural ingredients since 1954. Like most of Europe, France uses the euro. There are 100 cents in a euro, and coins range from 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, and 50 cent pieces, as well as 1 and 2 euro coins before notes take over. And because of the recent economic shenanigans and goings-on, the value of the euro has been all over the place. So it's a great idea to check the exchange rate before you come, because it can really affect the price of things when you're actually here. And with the cost of things in mind, let's do the rundown. A cup of coffee will cost you around 2 euros. A pint of beer will cost you around 6 euros. And for the most reliable indicator of a nation's cost, the good old Big Mac, you're going to pay just over 3 euros. It's extremely hot. Unlike a lot of countries in Europe, tipping is part of French dining culture. Or at least it was. It seems to be on the decline with you millennials, or whatever the hell you call yourself these days.
Believers.
But here's the rub. Almost all restaurants and cafes will add a 15% service charge to your bill. But that does not go to your server, who's usually paid an hourly wage or salary. That money goes to the restaurant owner. So if you've had a particularly good experience and want to leave an extra 5 to 10% on top of that 15% service charge, that will go to your server. Let's talk about shopping for a second. Paris is maybe even the fashion capital of the world. So it's positively bursting at the seams with high-end luxury boutiques, fashion brands, and all of that nonsense. But despite a decades-long debate and several attempts to change it, most shops are actually closed on Sundays, apart from the ultra-touristy fashion boutiques in places like the Champs-Élysées. However, in July 2015, the French government passed legislation allowing shops in certain parts of Paris, known as international tourist zones, to stay open on Sundays. Now, this legislation hasn't come fully into effect yet, and God knows this isn't the first time they've tried to do this, but hopefully by the time you're watching this video, it will be fully in effect. I know it sounds touristy, I know it sounds cliched, but one of my favorite things to do in Paris, especially in the summer, is climb up the steps to the Sacré-Cœur, buy an overpriced bottle of convenience store Heineken from one of Paris's more entrepreneurial residents, join in the rousing chorus of Aux Champs-Élysées, and just take in the view. And that, my friends, is the Attaché Guide to Paris. If you've been here before and feel like we've missed something, or you live here and think there's something that every visitor to this great city needs to know, then don't forget to leave it in the comments below. And while you're there, subscribe to our channel, because we have some amazing cities coming up in Season 2. But until next time, good health.